The race against the virus is back on. Booster jabs begin to save lives and to stop a winter crisis in the NHS. All over 50s will get one. First up are health workers and care home residents, meaning millions are now eligible for a single shot jab.
We know that COVID isn't going away anytime soon. We know we're also expecting a few more flu cases coming in as well. So times may well be tough.
With 8,000 in hospital with COVID, the pressure is clearly mounting. In Scotland and Northern Ireland, medics from the military have been called on for help. So how likely is it more measures will be needed? Anushka will be here with the latest. Also on News at 10 tonight. No jab, no job in a care home. Paul on how the new policies starting today could see an exodus of key workers. Did anyone expect their promises to be kept as the Taliban tightens its grip? We hear from women in Afghanistan.
It's suffocating. It's giving me a sense of suffocation.
Never knowingly mincing her words, the John Lewis boss tells Joel the government must sort lorry driver shortages to protect supplies for Christmas, and a hero's homecoming after the triumph of New York. Radekanu returns.
This is ITV News at 10 with Julie Etchingham.
Good evening. If starting booster jabs in England and Wales is a sign of the Prime Minister's light touch Plan A swinging into action, ready for winter, then it got off to a smooth start today. The NHS has jabbed most of the population twice already, but now it needs to be doing around 1 million vaccinations a day if you add coronavirus and flu together. No mean feat. There were signs from both Scotland and Northern Ireland that there may yet be a need for a tougher Plan B. They have both asked for military help. More on that in a moment. First, though, today's booster rollout.
OK, shot scratch.
For workers on the front line, getting a COVID booster jab is a necessity, not just for them.
There you go, all protected.
But also for the health service they love to work for.
I feel confident, going into winter. I can carry on doing my job as well, that won't be interrupted. I can carry on with my, family life as well.
Croydon Hospital was one of the first hubs to give third vaccinations today in a bid to ensure it isn't overwhelmed this winter. The over 50s, health and care workers and those with underlying health conditions will get a booster, as well as anyone living with someone who's immunosuppressed. That's 32 million people, but only 1.8 million of those are eligible right now, since it's given 6 months after the second dose. There's now really good evidence to suggest that immunity from the vaccine does wane after 6 months. So for these vulnerable elderly people, it's absolutely vital they get their booster to offer them maximum protection before what's going to be a really difficult winter. For Norma and the other residents at this care home in Cheltenham, the brief pain was worth it for the benefit they'll now get from having maximum immunity.
Nobody can be protected from everything, but it will be a help if we have, yes. And it'll keep us out of the hospital and the NHS.
And that, of course, is the main driver for these boosters, to avoid the NHS reaching a tipping point.
The NHS is already under a huge amount of pressure, and that's before we even hit the winter months. We know that COVID isn't going away anytime soon. We know we're also expecting a few more flu cases coming in as well. So times may well be tough.
The government is so far relying on vaccines to keep COVID at bay. Those advising the Prime Minister, though, are clear they might not be enough.
We need to keep going with all the various interventions we have. We may need to reintroduce the non-pharmaceutical interventions, things like face mask wearing and about distancing. But importantly, and the key thing is making sure that the immune protection is as high as we can make it.
Come along, let's do you.
With more than 8,000 people already in hospital with COVID and an expected flu epidemic, it is now a race against time to vaccinate as many people as possible. Emily Morgan, News at 10 in Cheltenham.
Well, as we head into autumn and towards our second COVID winter, the number of cases and indeed deaths is far higher than a year ago. This time last year, it was estimated that just 1 in 1,400 people had COVID. But this year, it's believed 1 in 70 people in England and 1 in 45 in Scotland have the virus. The vaccine programme, though, is keeping the vast majority of them out of hospital. And there is hope that cases may be falling too. The number of people testing positive is down by 22% in the past week. Well, our Deputy Political Editor, Anushka Astana, is here with me. Hi to you, Anushka. How confident are ministers that this vaccine programme is going to be enough and that they're not going to have to bring in these further restrictions, do you think?
You know, that data you just showed tells the story of the different moods in which I find people. So on the one hand, I've spoken to some really senior scientists who are advising government who are very nervous right now because, as you showed, there is a lot of COVID around and it is a riskier period with schools back, universities opening, people going back to the office. Some of them think that the government's plan B with mandatory masks and work from home guidance should really be plan A, but there is also a lot of optimism about what looks like a pretty big vaccine effect. You know, this time last year, deaths were doubling every 10 days. It looks like it's more like every 40 days right now. And the early indications from Israel, where the boosters have been rolling out, is that they're doing a very good job when it comes to serious illness. But look, while scientists lean towards nervousness, I would say from people I speak to, the ministers are leaning towards optimism. They pore over the data in briefings every day. They see the cases coming down. They know it's early days, but they think that is good news. And right now, no sign that they think we need to change the plan.
OK, on another tack now, suggestions tonight that there could be some relaxation in foreign travel rules coming out tomorrow. What do you know about that?
Well, we know that for England, the COVID-0 meeting of ministers will be meeting tomorrow morning. It will include the Transport Secretary and the Health Secretary, and they're going to look at the data and make final decisions then. But pretty sure that the red, amber, green system is going to be heavily simplified and that they will do away with those expensive PCR tests when you're coming back into the country. Instead, you'll need lateral flow. They're also likely to take a number of countries off the red list. And tonight we're hearing that popular destination, Turkey, might be one of them. There will also be new changes in other parts of the UK, but we're going to have to wait for them. OK, Anushka, thanks very much indeed for that.
Well, pressure on the NHS in both Northern Ireland and Scotland has led both governments to call in the army. Northern Ireland has asked the Ministry of Defence for up to 100 military medics to help in 2 of its hospitals in Belfast. The last time that happened was at the height of the second wave in January. Nicola Sturgeon, Scotland's First Minister, has also resorted to calling in the army, asking for military ambulances to free up more of the regular ones for 999 calls. It's to help with what she called unacceptably long ambulance waiting times.
I recognise that some people are not getting the standard of service that they should be getting, or indeed the standard of service that the Scottish Ambulance Service wants to deliver. That is not acceptable, and Well,
it was deadline day in England for care workers to have their first jab, with the second booked for mid-November at the latest, to continue working with their vulnerable clients. The government has made it a condition: no jab, no job. The idea, of course, is to protect those in their care, in residential homes or in their own homes. But one consequence is that some staff are leaving, often for the NHS, where the same rule doesn't as yet apply.
Yeah, come on then. You were up early today. Come on then, sweetheart.
It is their job to encourage others.
Up you get. That's lovely.
But now it's carers who need convincing. Among their duties at this home in Milton Keynes, several, like Sophia, do not count getting vaccinated.
I believe that God has given me an immune system that works properly. My reason for not taking the vaccine is religious.
Do you think your religious views are more important than the lives in this care home?
I would leave if I felt I was a risk to these people, but I don't feel that I am a risk.
You're already a risk though, aren't you, just by being here and not being vaccinated?
But they are vaccinated. They should be safe, shouldn't they?
Sophia will retire in the choice between a job or a jab.
Hey, Mum!
An ultimatum faced by all care home workers who look after vulnerable residents, like Jenny's mum, Carol.
I definitely believe in the jab, and I definitely believe, if nothing else, to cover yourself if you work with people. If that's your job, then I personally would like to feel that I'm protected.
And your mum's protected?
Yeah.
Today is the final chance for care home staff to get their first dose of protection, because the law states they need both jabs by November the 11th. Though new guidance issued just yesterday means any carer can declare themselves medically exempt simply by signing a letter.
Across the country, 18% of carers still haven't been double vaccinated. At this care home, they think 6 out of 36 staff will choose to leave their jobs instead, at a time when the sector can't afford to lose a single one.
Not when care is already facing its worst staffing crisis.
But this is a heartbreaking decision that is forced upon some individuals, and these individuals have given up a lot of their life to work in the care sector. We've got individuals today who have been here for 15 years, and we're going to lose that.
This home would prefer more time for persuasion, but carers have already had almost a year to make a choice, which from tonight is no longer their own. Paul Brand, News at 10, Milton Keynes.
Well, away from COVID now, and perhaps no one expected them to keep their promise. But when the Taliban seized Kabul and with it the control of Afghanistan, they said women's rights would be respected and protected. That was then. Now, 1 month on, the lives of millions of women are already different. 6 brave women wanted to tell us how theirs have changed dramatically. For anyone who was remotely tempted to give the Taliban the benefit of the doubt, just listen to these women's stories.
The Taliban told the world they'd changed, but for many Afghan women, it's as if their world has ended. Back behind the burqa, invisible in the streets, many suffer behind closed doors, but they do not suffer in silence.
We need the whole world to hear our voices.
ITV News spoke to 6 women from across the country. Each used to hold a position of power and responsibility.
Today is the most difficult day. Living this life is something we never expected, and it's because we feel so much pain in our heart.
This woman, whose identity we are protecting, once sat at the heart of government. One of the Taliban's first acts was to sack her.
Now our life is abandoned to watching a government of masculinity. I rather call upon the world leading powers to save us, to save our dreams and to save our values.
Halima's job was to safeguard female victims of male violence. Now she's a victim too, battered and bruised after a beating by the Taliban.
If I die, it's okay. I'm not worrying about my own self. But I was helping people, and now I cannot do that. And it's suffocating. It's giving me a sense of suffocation.
Then there's a testimony of the lawyer no longer able to practice the law and fearful of a future that echoes the past.
و ما در سن سال آخر طالبا بود که من 7 سال سن داشتم. ما با یک آینده مبهم پیش روان هستیم که اصلا ما نمیدونیم که آینده ما چی میشه. آیا این نظام دوباره سقوط میکنه؟ آیا ما پس به جمهوریت برمیگردیم؟ اینا رو واقعا نمیدونم.
Just a few short weeks have passed, but already it feels a lifetime ago. Nazia was a high-profile television presenter, ordered to stay home by her new masters.
I have decided to go to work and continue my job, but unfortunately the Taliban didn't allow me to enter the building, and totally I am sad and depressed because I can't continue my job as a journalist. In these days I am always thinking about this, that how can I save my life.
This doctor told us her career began 20 years ago at the moment the Taliban were ousted from power. She is still permitted to work, though with new restrictions and new hardships. If she could, she says, she would leave the country. For months, this activist sat at the negotiating table with the Taliban ahead of their return. Now she opposes them on the streets. She says all their promises have been broken.
برایم فکر کنید در افغانستان چقدر خانمای نخبه ما داشتیم، هیچ کدامشان ما شما داستانه نمیبینیم، هیچ کدامشان مادرسانه نمیبینیم، هیچ کدامشان مصاحبهشان نمیبینیم. اینا یک زینت زده شده، اینا وحشت شده، اینا ترسیده.
It has taken great courage to speak out in the hope that their fate, the fate of all women and the fate of their nation is not entirely sealed. John Ray, News at 10.
Amazing women speaking to John Ray. The defence deal binding us to the United States and Australia was always likely to rub some other countries up the wrong way, but the reaction from near and far has been what you might call hostile. China, the unspoken reason for the pact, said it would destabilise that part of the world. The French are furious too because now that Australia is going to get nuclear-powered submarines, it has cancelled a multi-billion euro order for French-built subs. So the French have in turn cancelled a gala they were planning at their embassy in Washington that was supposed to celebrate their links with America.
Hey, Boris. Well, good morning from Australia.
It's 24 hours since the announcement.
Two great friends of freedom.
The fanfare and flags, the 3 podiums in 3 cities.
Our world is becoming more complex, especially here in our region, the Indo-Pacific.
2 prime ministers and a president, but they were short on details, on dates, on figures, and even on names.
And I want to thank that fellow down under. Thank you very much, pal.
Prime Minister. Today, Boris Johnson confirmed to Parliament a deal which will give Australia the technology to build nuclear-powered submarines.
I hope I speak for the House when I say that I have no hesitation about trusting Australia, a fellow maritime democracy joined to us by blood and history, which stood by Britain through 2 world wars at immense sacrifice.
Johnson and the other leaders spoke only in vague terms about tension in the Indo-Pacific, but China believes this is an aggressive attempt to push back against it.
美国、英国与澳大利亚开展核潜艇合作，严重破坏地区和平稳定。
Only 6 countries worldwide currently have nuclear-powered submarines. If the deal announced yesterday goes ahead, Australia will be the first country since the Cold War to join that list. Announcing the deal, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison cited those increasing complexities in the Indo-Pacific for the decision, where China already has 6 nuclear submarines of their own and are building more. Australia's new nuclear submarines will allow Western powers a greater presence in the region. But French diplomats are furious with the US because its deal with Australia to build a dozen submarines has now been ditched. In response, the French have tonight cancelled a gala dinner to celebrate their relationship with the US.
C'est vraiment en bon français un coup dans le dos. Nous avions établi avec l'Australie une relation de confiance. Cette confiance est trahie. Et je suis aujourd'hui en colère, avec beaucoup d'amertume sur cette rupture.
I have a feeling that the manner in which it was done made it worse, because as far as I can gather, nobody actually talked to the French until just shortly before the announcement. And given the scale of this and the number of French jobs and French prestige involved, I mean, that seems to me to be a bad mistake.
Some thought the significance of last night's deal was being talked up, but it's already having consequences. Rohit Kachru, News at 10.
After yesterday's reshuffling of cabinet ministers at the top table of government, it was the turn of some ministers of state to find out their fate. The schools minister, Nick Gibb, who's held the job for more than 10 years with a break in the middle, is returning to the backbenches. So too is John Whittingdale, the former culture secretary and more recently media minister. In all, 6 ministers were told they had lost their jobs today. Now, the John Lewis Store Group has never knowingly let its shelves in its department stores or Waitrose supermarkets become empty. But today, its chair said that would happen in other stores in the run-up to Christmas if the government didn't make it easier to hire lorry drivers from abroad. John Lewis is already giving drivers pay rises and signing on bonuses to solve the problem. The co-op says it is struggling to keep its shelves full.
John Lewis usually throws everything at Christmas, and little wonder it's make or break time for retailers. The partnership is still loss-making, but its department stores are open again and there are signs of revival. So much so, the chair says there's an outside chance the bonus will be reinstated in the new year.
So it's stretching, but it's not impossible, and it would be lovely to be in a place where our profits have recovered to such a degree that we could reward our partners with a bonus.
What could possibly go wrong? Well, John Lewis, like all retailers, has been grappling with a dire shortage of lorry drivers. The partnership has increased basic pay for HGV drivers by more than £5,000 a year in the last month, and they've offered new recruits a £1,000 signing-on cash bonus. John Lewis says it now has enough drivers to supply its 365 Waitrose and John Lewis shops, but other retailers have much bigger networks. The Co-op, which also reported a loss today, says it is struggling to recruit lorry drivers. The chief executive said the shortage is making it hard to restock the shelves and is pushing up prices for consumers. He called on the government to intervene.
The government has set up a task force to look at what to do about the staff shortages that companies are reporting. Michael Gove was leading it, but responsibility has passed to Stephen Barclay, the former Brexit secretary, in yesterday's reshuffle.
Business groups are calling on the government to issue temporary work visas to avoid disruption at Christmas time. Today, John Lewis joined the choir.
I mean, it would certainly be helpful, but we're not depending on it. We have acted really hard and really fast to make sure that we can save Christmas. We're hiring more space in ship freight to ensure that, Christmas baubles and Christmas trees and all those wonderful gifts arrive early.
Just to be clear, you would like the government temporarily to make it easier to recruit from abroad?
It would certainly be helpful.
A glance at social media shows you that people are starting to notice the gaps on the shelves when they shop. Tonight, a spokesperson told ITV News that the government recognises the challenges business is facing and that it is taking steps to help streamline the training process for new HGV drivers. But the government appears determined not to issue temporary visas. Joel Hills, News at 10.
The inventor of the first home computers that many people had, Sir Clive Sinclair, has died at the age of 81. The Spectrum ZX was launched in 1980 and was effective by the standards of the time and just about affordable. It made him a millionaire and gained him a knighthood. He'll also be remembered for his other eye-catching but ultimately unpopular invention, the Sinclair C5 electric three-wheeler. Takes you back, doesn't it? His daughter said he was still working on new inventions right up until the end of last week. And he would have loved this next story too, no doubt. Probably the galaxy's most expensive mini-break. 3 days in space that has cost millions of dollars. But one day in, the 4 amateur astronauts on board the SpaceX craft do seem to be enjoying themselves, especially the 3 who haven't had to pay for anything. The mission is the most ambitious venture yet in these early days of space tourism.
This was a space mission for a new era. Blast off at Cape Canaveral, but no NASA involvement. Instead, the night sky lit up by a rocket from a private company carrying an all-civilian crew into orbit, watched by a world for whom space is now no longer the realm of professional astronauts.
Callouts indicate nominal historic mission.
And this latest version of space tourism also has a philanthropic dimension to raise money to fight childhood cancer.
Nobody's going up there to show off. It's actually for a purpose, a wise purpose, and that is to improve people's health, and the money raised also contributes to helping people's health be restored and the cure of cancer, etc. I'm a cancer survivor, and so it's an amazing thing.
The mission is entirely bankrolled by a billionaire crew member to raise money for this children's research hospital.
One of the things we hope to accomplish and why we named our mission Inspiration 4, to inspire others to be able to do extraordinary, maybe even unthinkable things like go out and venture amongst the stars today, but also to inspire people what's possible that can still be done here on Earth.
For the youngest member of the crew, that fundraising goal is deeply personal.
What's your move?
She not only works at the hospital, she was treated there as a child.
You know, this is a fundraising effort for St. Jude, and we're really excited to bring along an NFT by Kings of Leon's called Time in Disguise, their new release hit, and we're going to jam to it on Orbit and later auction that for St. Jude, which is so special to be part of.
A fundraising effort like no other, which it's hoped will bring in hundreds of millions of dollars in donations and inspire a new generation to look to the heavens and realise space is being opened up for all.
Very nice.
Dan Rivers, News at 10.
Well, it has been quite a couple of days for our former Good Morning Britain colleague Piers Morgan, hot on the heels of his News Presenter of the Year award yesterday from the Television and Radio Industries Club, a new job from his old newspaper boss, Rupert Murdoch. Now he'll have a regular
I'm very excited, yeah. It's, you know, I started my career at News Corporation with Rupert Murdoch, and I'm going back, you know, nearly 3 decades later. It's a good day.
Sorry for interrupting, Piers. Doesn't happen very often. Now he'll have a regular weeknight show broadcast here on a new Murdoch channel, Talk TV, but also in the United States and Australia. His old boss called Piers the broadcaster every channel wants, but is too afraid to hire. The England and Chelsea footballer Rhys James tonight released CCTV pictures from outside his home as he asked for help to find the burglars who broke into his house and stole his Champions League winners' medals. The 21-year-old shared this footage of the robbers stealing a safe from his house in Surrey on Tuesday night while he was away playing at Stamford Bridge. Police say they are investigating. Now, when tennis star Emma Radekanu set off from her home in Bromley in Kent 7 weeks ago, it was as an A-level student. Today, she returned as an A-list star. She'd called her parents hard to please in an American TV interview, but her father looked very pleased to see her and she him on their front lawn. Last time they were together, she wasn't the US Open tennis champion.
Morning, Emma. Morning, Emma. You all right? Congratulations.
She left home nearly 2 months ago, a straight-A student dreaming of a brilliant tennis career. She's returned a Grand Slam champion, nearly £2 million richer, and with big brands tripping over themselves to sign her up.
No, it's a great feeling to be back home. I've been away for 7 weeks, so it's nice to be back.
Yeah? Good to hug your parents again?
Yeah, it was nice to see them again.
And what's your plan going forward now?
Haven't thought of anything. I'm just enjoying it and relaxing, recovering, and we'll make some plans.
Her whirlwind began less than a week ago, and since then she's hardly had a moment to herself. Her face lit up the New York backdrop.
How are you going to top this?
Yeah, it's absolutely insane to think.
She's charmed the US breakfast shows, held centre stage at a prestigious A-list event.
I'm Emma Radekanu and I'm on my way to the Met Gala. I'm so excited. Bye!
And even paid a visit to the New York Stock Exchange.
I'm
proud of her, said Daddy in this afternoon, admitting he was relieved to have her home. She won't be there for long, though. A whole new world awaits Emma Radekanu, both on and off the court. Also waiting, millions of fans impatient to see what happens next to Britain's newest sporting superstar. Steve Scott, News at 10.
Now, to end tonight, some very sad news that has touched every single one of us here at ITV News. The inspirational and exceptional journalist who was our editor for 7 years, Geoff Hill, has died from the leukemia that has been undermining his health these past 4 years. Geoff was 52. Geoff first came to ITN more than 20 years ago. He edited this programme and, bar a spell with our American partners CNN, over those years rose to lead our newsroom, which he did with passion, great judgment and both spontaneity and thoughtfulness. He described the job as the greatest honour. Geoff was never just a glass half full kind of person. His enthusiasm and optimism meant his glass always seemed to be fizzing and brimming over. He faced his illness with the same unwavering optimism and determination. Geoff's wonderful wife, Nat, also works with us, and he had 3 children. But he often spoke of ITN as being his other family. Our thoughts are with Nat, and with Emily, Olivia and Alfie, and all those who loved him, or who were lucky enough to call him a friend. We will miss him very much. That is News at 10 for tonight. From all of us here, good night.